Hey there, welcome back to the channel. You got betrayed. Maybe by the one person you thought would never hurt you, the one you trusted with your rawest emotions, the one who swore they'd stay but didn't. Not only did they leave, they watched you crumble and looked away like none of it mattered. They watched you suffer silently, and they didn't flinch. You could have begged, you could have screamed, you could have torn your own heart out just to prove you were worth fighting for, but you didn't. You chose silence, not because you didn't feel, but because you felt everything and still chose dignity. They expected you to fall apart publicly. They waited for the late-night text, the emotional breakdown, the desperate phone call. But it never came. You grieved in private. You died in 1,000 quiet ways they'll never see, but you also rose in 1,000 more they'll never be able to forget. You didn't become louder, you became colder, sharper, wiser. Your silence became your shield, your weapon, your answer to the chaos they brought into your life. There's something powerful about the kind of person who walks away without needing to be seen. The person who doesn't seek revenge, validation, or understanding, because they've already found it in themselves. You're not the same anymore. You don't walk with desperation in your steps. You walk with purpose. You don't cry for attention. You've learned to listen to your own soul. And while they pretend to move on unbothered, the truth is, they feel the absence deeply. Not because you did anything, but because you stopped doing everything. You stopped showing up. You stopped chasing. You stopped caring in a way that shook their foundation. Go back to your peace. Stay silent. They will remember you, not because you were loud, but because you were real. And the moment they finally sit with their thoughts, they'll realize they lost something rare. They lost someone who didn't just love them. They lost someone who could have healed them. But you're done being medicine for people who only bring disease. Now I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I rise quietly, and they will feel it forever. Let's begin. Number 1. You were loyal to the wrong people, but it taught you loyalty to yourself. You were loyal to the wrong people, but it taught you something sacred, loyalty to yourself. You gave everything without holding back. You showed up for them on the days you couldn't even show up for yourself. You listened through their silence, supported them through their storms, and stood beside them even when they wouldn't stand beside you. You made excuses for their distance, justified their mood swings, and took the blame when they couldn't own their actions. Deep down, you felt something was off. Your intuition whispered that love shouldn't feel like begging to matter. But you were so full of hope that you believed your consistency could change them, that if you loved them more purely, more patiently, they'd finally recognize your worth. But they didn't. They didn't change. They didn't soften. They didn't stay. Instead, they drained you. They fed off your kindness, exploited your forgiveness, and disappeared when your cup was empty. And when there was nothing left of you to give, they made you feel like the problem. That betrayal runs deep, not because they left, but because they made you feel like being loyal was a weakness. But now you see the truth. It wasn't your loyalty that broke you. It was giving it to someone who never earned it. You've been taught now, painfully but powerfully, that your loyalty must begin with you, that your love must first be directed inward. You don't pour into hands that only take. You don't break yourself to fix someone who doesn't want to be whole. You don't abandon your peace to be accepted. And most of all, you don't explain your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. You're not bitter, you're awake. You're not cold, you're careful. And from now on, loyalty isn't just about who you choose to stand by. It's about who you refuse to lose in the process. You. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." Choosing yourself after betrayal is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. Not just surviving the pain, but growing from it. You were loyal to the wrong person, but now you're devoted to the right one, yourself. Number 2, you're not weak for walking away. You're strong for staying silent. Weakness is reacting just to be heard. It's exploding when you feel small, lashing out when you feel unseen. But you didn't do that. You chose the path few dare to take. You left without noise. No dramatic exit, no rage, no cryptic posts. Just distance, just quiet. And that silence, it still lives in their mind. Not because it was empty, but because it was full of everything you never said. You left them with questions they'll never get answers to. And that's where your power lies. Not in confrontation, but in control. The kind of control that comes from knowing your truth so deeply. You don't have to prove it to anyone. They may paint their version of what happened. Let them. They may play the victim, twist the story, act like they were blindsided. Let them, because you know what happened. And the truth doesn't need a megaphone. It needs integrity. You didn't leave to hurt them. You left because staying meant hurting yourself. You didn't go quiet out of fear. You went quiet out of clarity. Because when you realize that arguing with someone who never really listened is just a cycle, you stop playing. You don't need to scream when you know who you are. Your silence becomes your statement. It says, I'm done. I've given all I can. And now, I'm choosing me. You're not heartless. You're healing. You're not passive. You're powerful. The strongest people are the ones who know when to walk away with grace. Not because they're okay, but because they're done settling for less. You no longer need to explain your pain to those who caused it. You no longer want to be understood by people who refuse to understand you when it mattered. And you no longer feel the urge to fix what keeps breaking you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Your silence is not revenge. It's evolution. It's self-respect in motion. You didn't walk away because you were weak. You walked away because for once you chose your dignity over their approval. And that is strength most people never reach. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence is not weakness. It is self-respect. Number 3. They lost access, not importance. Know the difference. You're still human. Some days you miss them. You remember the laughs, the inside jokes, the shared silence that once felt safe. It creeps in without warning when your favorite song plays. When you pass a place you went together, when the nights get too quiet. It hurts, not because you're weak, but because you were real. The memories weren't fake. The love you gave wasn't forced. You were honest, raw, and present. And that's why it cuts so deep when someone you gave your heart to could walk away like none of it mattered. But just because you miss them doesn't mean they deserve you back. There's a big difference between importance and access. They might still matter in your heart, but they no longer belong in your life. That's not cold, it's clarity. They didn't forget you. Trust that. People who experience something genuine remember it, every day, in silence. When they lie awake, scrolling through old pictures. When someone else can't make them laugh the way you did. When their ego stops talking and the truth gets loud. You live in their memory, even if they pretend you don't. But they lost the privilege to know who you're becoming now. They no longer get your updates. They don't get to see your growth. They don't get to reach out when loneliness hits and pretend it was love all along. That door is closed, not locked in anger, but sealed with boundaries. You didn't cut them off to be cruel. You cut them off because your peace finally mattered more than their convenience. Seneca once said, Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Choosing to live without them, when part of you still misses them, is a brave act of self-preservation. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Missing them is natural. Letting them back in would be self-betrayal. You are not the same person who tolerated confusion, excuses, and temporary love. You're evolving, and your access now comes with a price. Honesty, consistency, respect. They had a chance. They chose ego, silence, or comfort. So now, they get memories. That's the trade-off. They don't get to hear your laugh anymore. They don't get to know who you're seeing, what you're building, how your eyes light up again. They lost access. That doesn't mean they lost meaning. It means they no longer have permission to interrupt your healing. So miss them if you must. But don't break your boundaries just because your heart still echoes with love. Growth means protecting what you once gave away too freely. Number 4, you don't come back for revenge. You come back rebuilt. You're not trying to prove anything, not trying to win some invisible game. You're not posting glow-up photos with captions full of hidden meanings. You're not leaving breadcrumbs online hoping they'll notice. You're not trying to make them feel what you once felt. That's not your mission anymore. Because growth doesn't look like revenge. It looks like quiet rebuilding. It looks like healing so deeply that the version of you they knew no longer exists. Not because you changed for them, but because you found out who you really are without their chaos. What you're becoming speaks louder than anything you could say. And the louder you become in your purpose, the quieter you get in their world. That's the win. You went through it. Not just the pain, but the aftermath, the second guessing, the nights you couldn't sleep, the mornings you didn't want to get up. You broke quietly, away from everyone. You wrestled with the questions that had no answers. You blamed yourself. You wondered if you were too much or not enough. You gave yourself to someone who didn't know how to hold you. But still, you stayed soft. You stayed real. And slowly, you picked yourself back up, piece by piece. No applause. No one came to say they were sorry. No one helped you through it. But you kept walking anyway. That's strength. That's transformation. Seneca said, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." And you've been walking that road, not for applause, not for validation, but because you were tired of living below your worth. You were tired of begging to be seen when you were already enough. Now when you show up, it's not for them, it's for the world that's been waiting for the strongest version of you to arrive. You don't have to speak. Your energy enters first. The way you walk, the way you don't flinch, the way you don't explain anymore. That silence is louder than any revenge could ever be. Let them see you, not the old you who begged for love. Let them see the new you, the one who doesn't flinch when left unseen, the one who doesn't explain where they went, the one who glows without needing attention. Because you didn't return to haunt them, you returned to honor yourself. And that alone is more powerful than anything they were prepared for. Repeat this, believe it, and post it. I'm not back for revenge. I'm back as someone they can't reach. Number 5. You became the version of yourself they hoped you'd never find. You used to need their approval. You waited for their replies like your day depended on it. You second-guessed your words, your worth, your presence, just to keep the peace. You thought if you loved them right, they'd finally see you. So you softened. You stayed quiet. You let things slide. Not because you were weak, but because you loved deeply and didn't want to lose them. They liked that version of you, the one that was available at 2 a.m., the one that forgave without apology, the one that gave without asking for anything back. That version made them feel powerful, but that version was burning you out. Then one day, you got tired of feeling empty after giving everything. You got tired of begging to be seen. You started noticing how you were bending in ways they never even thanked you for. And instead of exploding, you withdrew, slowly, quietly. You started asking harder questions. You started seeing the patterns. You realized love shouldn't feel like constantly proving yourself. That's when things shifted. You stopped answering immediately. You started protecting your space. You started healing, and they didn't like that. Because when you stop needing them, their control disappears. The version of you they liked was easy to manipulate, afraid to be alone, desperate for crumbs of attention. But now you sit alone and feel peace, not panic. You go hours, days, even weeks without reaching out, not out of pride, but out of peace. Your energy became focused. You look in the mirror and see someone who honors their worth. You speak slower, with more intention. You take longer to decide, because not everyone deserves access anymore. You've raised your standards, not just for love, but for how you let people make you feel. You became powerful in silence, dangerous in stillness. Not because you're cold, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop begging for love. You understand now. Not everyone deserves the healed version of you. Some people only had access to the broken you because you hadn't met the strong one yet. But now she's here. Now he's risen. And there's no going back. Number 6. The old you would have explained. The new you just exits. You used to pour your heart out like it was your responsibility to make them understand. You'd send long texts, explain every emotion, break down every moment, hoping they'd just get it. You wanted to be heard so badly, you kept trying, even when it hurt. You replayed every conversation in your mind, wondering what you could have said better, what you should have said sooner. You thought maybe, just maybe, if you explained it the right way, they'd finally stay. They'd finally treat you right. But no matter how clear you were, they were always confused. No matter how patient you were, they were always distant. It wasn't a lack of communication, it was a lack of care. And you see that now. The old you needed their validation. The old you couldn't walk away unless they understood why. The old you thought closure came from their side. But growth teaches you something else. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you choose. And the new you don't argue with disrespect. You don't explain yourself to people who choose not to listen. You don't try to fix people who benefit from keeping you broken. You just leave. No warning, no final monologue, no dramatic exit. Just peace. You don't slam the door. You close it gently and lock it for good. You don't look back. You walk forward with clarity. You don't chase an apology. You give yourself the truth and move on. That kind of silence isn't cold. It's sacred. That kind of exit doesn't scream. It echoes, because the most unforgettable thing you can do is heal in front of the people who expected you to stay hurt. They'll remember the day you stopped explaining, the day you stopped fighting to be seen, the day you chose to be your own closure. And they'll feel it, not through what you said, but through everything you didn't. You didn't leave to hurt them. You left to protect you. And there's nothing louder than the silence of someone who used to explain everything, finally choosing to say nothing. That's not giving up. That's rising up. Number 7. You are the loss now. Let them say you switched up. You did. Let them whisper that you're distant, colder, more guarded. Maybe that's true, but they don't mention the nights you stayed awake, overthinking every word they said. They don't mention how you gave them chance after chance, even when it broke you to keep believing in someone who kept disappointing you. They won't tell people how you held them down when they had nothing, or how you forgave things you never got an apology for. They won't talk about the way you stood by them while you were falling apart, because admitting that would mean admitting what they lost. They only speak now because the silence is louder than your presence ever was. They feel it now, in the quiet moments, in the space where your loyalty used to be. They scroll and pause when they see you. They wonder, they overthink, they remember, because now you are the loss. You are the one who got away, the one who grew up, the one who no longer answers, the one they can't reach, not because you're bitter, but because you outgrew the place where they left you. And it's not about revenge, it's not about proving anything, it's not about showing off, it's about showing up for yourself in ways you never did when they were around. You learned to love yourself the way they never could, and that's what stings them the most. You are no longer a chapter in their story. You are the lesson. And lessons hit harder than losses. Because lessons change people, but only after it's too late to fix what they ruined. You were once the one they called in the middle of the night, the one they took for granted, the one they thought would always be there. But they never expected you to become the one who disappeared, fully, completely, without warning. And now, you are the absence that follows them everywhere. You are the name they hear in silence, the memory they try to shake but can't. You are the loss they never saw coming, and the one they'll never stop feeling. Listen closely. The way you loved wasn't wrong. It was rare. And rare scares people who aren't ready for it. They mistook your softness for weakness, your loyalty for naivety, your silence for surrender. But it wasn't. It was strength they couldn't comprehend. It was depth they weren't prepared to swim in. They didn't break you. They exposed you to yourself. They were the storm, but you were the ground that learned how to stand firmer because of it. Now you move differently. You speak less. You guard more, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You no longer try to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You've learned that your peace is worth more than their validation. You've stopped chasing clarity from people who thrive on chaos. You've stopped begging to be seen by people who refuse to open their eyes. And in doing so, you've become untouchable. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You don't need to be remembered. Because the truth is, they already do. In silence, in regret, in every moment they scroll and feel the absence you left behind. That's not your burden anymore. That's their lesson. You've already reclaimed the most powerful thing you could, yourself. And now you rise, not to prove anything, not to win anyone back, but to live as the person you were always meant to be, whole, healed, and free. If this touched something real in you, subscribe. Your healing is not the end. It's the beginning. Let's rise together.